One tag, 1 week, one shot to make it count. This is for the hunters who hit the road and get after it, no matter the odds. This is Drawn West. Welcome back to another episode of the Drawn West podcast, brought to you by Go Hunt. It is 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. We want to help each and every person that has a desire to hunt the West. We want to help you plan those hunts, have the confidence, the knowledge, the tools and the resources to go and chase your dreams in the West. It's one of our favorite places to hunt. And I really want to help every single person that wants to go with all of that information. And so that's what we're going to do here today. We are going to do a full breakdown of how to plan your first Western hunt. And if you're someone that's gone out West time and time again, maybe every year, maybe multiple times a year, there's still going to be some really valuable stuff in this podcast for you. But we're going to go through that whole process. There's a lot of things that I hear when I talk to people about going hunting. They'd be like, well, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my money. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get the tags. It's a complicated system. And we're going to break down all of those. And so by the end of this episode, you are going to have everything you need to know in order to take that next step. You're going to go from, I don't know where to start, to I know exactly what to do next. Before we dive into that, we want to make an announcement. Our Colorado Mule Deer film is out there. Thank you to everyone that has gone over to our YouTube channel and watched our hunt. It means a lot to both me and Abby. We put this film together. We had a lot of fun doing it, and we're really excited about it. So if you haven't yet gone to our YouTube channel, go check out that Colorado Mule Deer film. It's about 30 minutes, no commercials, no advertising. It's just a fun hunt from our trip to Colorado. There's going to be a ton of bucks, a ton of antlers. If you're someone that used to grow up watching the Outdoor Channel on Saturday and Sunday mornings because there were so many big bucks on those shows, this is going to be the perfect episode for you because it's full of giant deer. So go give that a watch. We really appreciate it. Drop a comment, send us an email if you watched it to what your favorite parts were. And if you have any ideas for how to make our videos better, new videos, new hunts, we love to hear them. So thank you. And now let's dive in. So if you've been somebody that has always wanted to go hunt out West, or you're new to hunting out West, this is going to be the perfect episode for you because we're going to talk through all of the things that go into planning a hunt out West. And if you've done this time and time again, 20 or 30 trips out West, there might be a few things you pick up. We are not experts by any stretch of the imagination, but I've done it a fair number of times, and I've done a lot of things wrong that I can certainly help the next person along try to avoid some of those mistakes. That's our goal here today, is just to help people with what we've experienced. So step one, when you're planning a hunt, a lot of people get really, really excited about the planning phase, right? And you should. It's an exciting thing to plan and to say, yes, I'm going to go and this is what I'm going to do. And you start daydreaming about what it's going to be like. That's good. But one of the things to keep in mind when you're excited about your first hunt, we have to go through a couple of, not hoops, but there's a couple things to think about, right? When you plan your first hunt. A lot of people will see every September on Instagram, there's a ton of giant bulls that hit the ground. Grip and grins, 10-mile back out stories. And people get excited. They say, hey, I want to do this. I want to do this backcountry elk hunt. There's nothing wrong with a backcountry elk hunt, but it's very difficult to start with if you've never gone out West. And so I think there's just a couple questions to ask yourself first so that you have the best possible experience when you go out West. That's what I want for you, is to have a fun time and to get home and be like, I can't wait to do it again. I don't want you to go on a hunt where, yeah, it looks really cool, but you are struggling while you're there. It's mentally taxing. You're not having a good time. You get home and you're like, man, I feel like that was kind of a waste. That no one likes that. No one wants that. So here's how you go through that. First of all, which species do you actually want to hunt? Yeah, everyone loves the elk. Everyone loves a moose hunt. Um, if you get gifted one of those, of course, take it. But is that the most realistic first hunt to go on? There's a lot of things that go into an elk hunt. Um, I personally think your first hunt should be focused on success, and that could mean having a good time, seeing lots of animals, getting lots of opportunities. It might not always mean punching a tag, but elk can be finicky. It can be hard to get on elk. I've done elk hunts where I barely even seen an elk the whole week. Um, that doesn't really make for one of those hunts that you're like, oh, I can't wait to do this again. Now, on the other hand, antelope, a hunt where you are guaranteed to see antelope. I don't know if I've ever talked to an antelope hunter that didn't see antelope. I don't know if I've ever talked to an antelope hunter that didn't get lots of opportunities to go on stocks, to glass bucks. It's kind of a optimal hunt in terms of early success, excitement, right? Think about it this way. If for those of you that have kids, you bring your kids out hunting or fishing, you don't bring them out fishing for muskies the first time, right? Why is that? Because it takes 10,000 casts or somewhere around there. You know, you could fish all day and not even see a fish. Of course, your little one isn't going to enjoy that, right? You take them sun fishing. You take them somewhere with a bobber, tons of fish. They're going to get action. That's kind of the same thought process when it comes to your first Western hunt. Go somewhere where you're going to get lots of action, where you're going to have lots of excitement, things going on. Mule deer can be that perfect middle ground. Mule deer can be as hard as an elk hunt, especially if you do early season, above the tree line. It can be kind of harder to find animals, depending on what state you go into. If it's all black timber, it can be real hard to find animals. On the flip side, if you go to certain places, foothills, the Front Range, the breaks, things like this that are more open, it can be more like an antelope hunt where you're seeing mule deer constantly. That was our hunt here just this year in Colorado. Kind of felt like an antelope hunt. We saw thousands of deer. So pick your species accordingly. It's okay to start with something and build into, maybe you want to elk hunt. Maybe your dream is to elk hunt, but you've never gone out west. You don't have a ton of gear. Probably start smaller. Start with an antelope or a mule deer hunt. Um, and work into that elk hunt. When you build up all those experiences, you slowly build some gear. That way, when you go on your first elk hunt, you're primed. You're ready to go. You've got all the experience. You're used to going out west. You're used to looking at units. You're used to e-scouting. You've got it all in hand. So next is the weapon. I'll admit, I think everything's more fun with a bow. When you shoot an animal with a bow, it's amazing, and I love it. However, it's way harder, and it happens way less often. So be very realistic. Are you a die-hard bow hunter, bow only hunter? Sure, use your bow. Are you someone that just likes the experience, likes to be there, doesn't really mind whether it's a bow or a rifle? I would maybe lean towards a rifle. You're going to get more opportunities. You're going to get more shots. You're going to have a higher success rate with a rifle. Just hands down across the board, rifles are easier. That's why they have shorter seasons. That's why the tags are harder to draw, because you fill them more often than with a bow. And so, archery antelope, probably not the thing to start with unless you like sitting in a ground blind. And if you do, and you have maybe a private land that you work with or an outfitter, sure, do archery antelope hunt. That can be fun. Archery antelope spot and stock, not fun, right? Not fun at all. So be realistic with your weapon. I really advocate rifles for a first hunt. And typically, if you are a rifle hunter already, you rifle hunt maybe whitetails back home, you probably have a rifle that will work for most things, right? So what do I mean by that? Your 243, your deer rifle, perfect for antelope. Nothing needed there. For mule deer, yeah, typically Western mule deer hunters use a larger caliber, but you can use a 243. You just have to maybe be realistic with your shot distances and keep, those shots a little bit closer. Can you shoot an elk with a 243? I think there's some laws in certain states that you'd have to check on. I'm not an expert on 243 regulations, but a lot of states do have some minimum calibers. 243 is probably on the light side for an elk. You'd probably have to keep your shots very close to be ethical. But if you have a 270, a 6.5 Creedmoor, 7mm08, any of those rifles, perfect. You can make it work. Just keep your shot distances reasonable for elk. You probably don't have to buy a rifle, is what I'm telling you. Now, if you're a bow hunter, you might want to look at your arrows. You might want to look at your broadheads, but you probably have a bow that's perfectly fine to shoot anything in North America, at least in the lower 48. Then you go with time, right? Another practicality question. How much time do you have? Did you just start a new career and you only get 10 days of vacation a year? Archery elk is a long hunt typically. Are you going to blow all of your vacation for this? I mean, if you're a family person and you have family vacations and all these things, it's all things to consider, right? And that can go into what do you want to hunt first. Antelope typically is a shorter hunt. You can typically do an antelope maybe 4 or 5 days. Deer hunting, typically a little bit shorter. Maybe it's 4 days, maybe it's 7 days. Most people elk hunt for a full week. Now, you certainly could get lucky, have a trick. You might have some secret skill and you get done in 2 days. But most elk hunts are a full, like leave on Saturday, hunt all week, come home the following Sunday type hunt, maybe even a little bit longer. And so if you've only got 5 days of PTO available, be realistic with that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just pick a hunt where you can feel like you've got the full experience. You don't want to go on an elk hunt and have a day of travel, 3 days of hunting, and then a day of travel back and feel like you barely even scratched the surface. You did all this work, you spent the money on the tag, you got all the way over to the elk unit, and you only got to spend 3 days there. That's really challenging. We've talked to people that have to do it because that's just their life, and the career they have doesn't allow them to do these hunts. Like Jeff Cordero, we had on a previous podcast episode. He's part of a NASCAR pit crew that runs every weekend. So he's only got Monday through Friday and he has to get there and get back. So he really only has 3 days of hunting and he makes it work, but that's because that's his life in the fall. So time off, big part of it. Don't overlook that. Not last, but next, let's talk about like physical expectations of these hunts, right? Every single person listening to this podcast is in a different place when it comes to physical capabilities, your fitness, your exercise regimen. Every one of us is different, and that's okay. I truly believe there is a way for almost everyone to hunt the West. We see it all the time on Make-A-Wish, Catch a Dream foundations. They're doing crazy, awesome hunts with people with very limiting capabilities, physical capabilities, right? Off-road wheelchairs, you name it, they pull it off, right? So if you're able-bodied, I think there's always an option out there for you. Now, does that mean every single person can do a stone sheep hunt in the Alaskan frontier or British Columbia? No, I can't. I work out all the time, but I don't think I'm capable of doing that. But there's something out there for everyone. Antelope hunting, usually pretty mild in terms of physical requirements, right? It's a lot of windshield time. It's a lot of driving around, glassing antelope, maybe get out, walk 100 yards over just out a little bit so you can see past a hill. Generally not a lot of topography to work with. Antelope don't like topography. They like to be out on the flat savanna because their number one defense mechanism is being able to see almost 360 degrees around them. So they want a big, wide open plain that they can always look at what's out there. You get antelope in the hills and something can sneak up on them really easy. And so they don't like a ton of topography. Elk, on the other hand, they love topography. It's nothing for an elk to jump and run right over a ridge and back into a different mountain range. They don't mind it at all. So be realistic. And what are you looking for? Just because you can do something, is that going to make you excited about that hunt, right? I sometimes don't like doing the most difficult, challenging hunts. I like to sometimes enjoy my time out there. And that's what I love about antelope hunting is it's just great fun the whole time. It's not one of those suffer through the moment and then look back on it fondly. A lot of times elk hunting is that type 2 fun where you're kind of suffering through the moment but then you look back on it and you can't wait to do it again. So be very realistic, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with however you decide it. There's also units all over the place. There are, you know, elk units that have less topography, less rugged terrain. There's antelope hunts that can be a little bit challenging. There's units for everything. You just want to be very realistic. Don't get excited about doing a backcountry, archery elk hunt and then get surprised when you hit the trailhead and it's steep, straight wall. And then the last thing that I always talk about, DIY versus guided. This is a very real question, and there's more nuance to this question than a lot of people will give it credit for. A lot of people on social media, or you're talking to them, they think DIY is the only way you should ever go, and it's only cool if you do it yourself. That's not entirely true. I mean, yes, it is very rewarding when you do things yourself. I grant every single person that says it that point. But if you're someone that realistically is only going to do a single hunt out west, right? Like maybe you prioritize other things in life, and that's fine, and you just want to go elk hunting one time. Well, if you want to go elk hunting one time in your life and you really want to get yourself an elk, that might be a situation where you think about guided, right? DIY is great. It's awesome. And it can get you out there hunting faster. It's a lot more affordable, but it takes a while to learn all those skills. If you go with a guide, their job is to do this. They do it all season, every season. And so you're going to gain a lot by relying on their experience. And if you're only going to do one of these hunts, antelope, mule deer, elk, doesn't matter what it is, really. If you're realistically only ever going to do it one time, there might be a place to say, let's do guided. Let's save up for a couple years and do guided. Now, here's how I think about it. I don't want to do most of these hunts just one time. I want to do them as many times as possible. And so for me, it's almost an investment when I pick DIY. Yeah, it might not tag out the first couple years, and I didn't for my first couple elk hunts, but I'm going to gain experience, knowledge, gear, skills, and eventually I'm going to start getting better and better and better. And pretty soon I'm getting almost the same quality as a guided hunt for much, much less money. When I'm planning hunts, I like to know what my odds of drawing the tags are so I can apply accordingly and have a better idea where I'll be hunting this fall. I like to go out west every year, and to do that means I've got to keep an eye on point creep and draw odds so I know which states Abby and I should be applying for so we have a tag in our pocket come fall. Our favorite way to see what the current draw odds for a unit are and how fast point creep is moving is by using the draw odds tool in the Go Hunt Insider service. We can look at any unit over multiple years to get an idea of how fast point creep is moving and what last year's draw odds were and get an idea of where we stand for this year's application. Draw odds is just one of the tools you'll get when you sign up for Go Hunt Insider that I use on every one of my hunts. Head over to gohunt.com and check out Insider, and you'll see why it's my single favorite resource for Western hunting. And when you sign up, use the code DRAWNWEST, that's one word, DRAWNWEST, and they will give you $50 of free credit in the gear shop towards any gear you need for your next hunt. Go to gohunt.com, get signed up, and you'll see you have way more opportunities than you realize. And so that's why I pick guided. You can make that decision yourself. If the money's there, why not? Right? I would love to go guided if I could afford it the same as I could afford DIY because there's higher success rates. There's no doubt about it. Going guided, you will have higher success rates. You'll probably have more opportunities on average. I once talked to Ryan Carter. We've had Ryan Carter on the podcast. For those that don't know, Ryan Carter operates DC Outfitters, a very, very high-level guide and outfitter in Utah, hunting very limited units, giant bulls. Typically, his clientele is purchasing tags at auctions, right? So they might be spending $20, $30, $40, $50,000 to buy the tag through a charitable auction, right? They auction off some tags. The money goes towards wildlife. He goes, yeah, but to these guys, that's like a 1 week's wages. If you could do this thing for 1 week of work, why wouldn't you? And so if you put it in that perspective, like if you have the resources, why not? Like that's probably why a lot of us do work as hard as we do, is to do these types of things, things that we think are fun. So there's nothing wrong with going guided. It's just a very practical question. Do you want to do DIY or do you want to do guided? So the main takeaway is that your first hunt should fit your life, not your ego or your dream, right? Make your first Western hunt meet you where you are. Don't try to reach to this level of whatever it could be. It could be backcountry elk. It could be solo sheep. It could be, you name it, early season archery, spot and stock, mule deer in the alpine. If that's not where you are already, don't reach too far to get to there. Pick a hunt that meets you where you're at, right? That you can do with the gear you have, the time you have, the physical capabilities that you currently have, and then work from there. If you decide, yeah, I loved it, I want to do it again, now I'm going to spend the next year getting a little better. I'm going to train a little harder. I'm going to save for a little bit better gear and work your way into those dream hunts. The next kind of step is understanding the tags. You can't go out west hunting unless you have a tag. And there's a ton of confusion around tags. We're not going to dive into every single system. That'll likely be a podcast here in the near future that we dive into all the application systems out west. But at a high level, there's like 3 buckets of tags. There's over-the-counter options, there's lotteries, and then there's various types of point systems, right? Over-the-counter is by far becoming the most rare type of a tag system, right? Right now that I'm aware of, Colorado has some elk hunting over the counter for rifles. They used to have over the counter archery. They've taken that away. You can still get like a 0-point application. So it's kind of like a first come, first serve over the counter, but it's not truly over the counter. A true over the counter system is unlimited tags. You go to Walmart, you go to a gas station, you buy your license when you get there, right? Many eastern whitetail states operate this way, right? Here in my home state of Minnesota, I just go to the gas station, I buy my license. They never sell out. There's no limit. There's no quota. There's no application. There are a few. A lot of times it could be leftover tags. Sometimes some deer tags in the Midwest. So think Dakotas, Kansas, Nebraska. I think some of those have some technical over-the-counter whitetail tags. By and large, the rule of thumb is over-the-counter tags can be over-the-counter. They're allowed. Those places are able to do over-the-counter for a reason. And the reason is there's more supply than demand, right? There's more animals in that unit than there's demand for the tags. And the number one reason why that is because there's no demand. It's not because they're overwhelmed with giant bulls and bucks. It's because there's no demand. And that can be a number of reasons. It can be difficult terrain. It can be mostly private land. There can be all kinds of different challenges, just not trophy quality people want to hunt. But it's usually because it's a hard hunt that there's over-the-counter tags. And so be wary of an over-the-counter. Sounds like a great option. And I've done it. I've used over-the-counter tags before. Don't get me wrong. It can be a great option, but it's not usually because it's the best unit. So keep that in mind. Then you get into lotteries. Lotteries are straight random odds. There's no point systems. It's just a straight random odd. Idaho has a lottery. New Mexico has a lottery. A couple other species around the West are mixed in that have lotteries. You'll find out what the averages are based on how many people applied last year, how many tags were given out, and you know what your odds are. And sometimes they can be good odds. There's places where you can get 30, 40, 50, 80%, but there's also places like in New Mexico and the Gila where you're going to have less than 1% because that's the tag everyone wants. And then there's point systems. The point systems can be complicated. Basically, every state has their own point system. I'm not aware of any 2 states having the same point system. The simplest point system is a preference point system. Colorado does this. You buy points, you apply for the tag, they look at all the applications and they start at the top, whoever has the most points. And they give that person a tag. There's one less tag available. They go down to the next. Then they give out what's remaining. And eventually somewhere it usually runs out. And then that was where we're at wherever it runs out. We call that a X point unit, right? So we'll walk through an example. Unit 10 in Colorado, northwest corner. It's a very popular unit. I'm not wrecking this unit for anyone. Everyone already knows about this unit. Let's say they give out 10 tags a year for elk, right? But thousands of people apply. So they have 10 tags. It's going to take max points. We know this. I think they're up to 31, 32 points. So let's say 2 people apply with 32 points, max points. Out of that 10 tags, 2 of them go there. Now they have 8 left and they go down to 31 points. And they say, how many people applied at 31 points? And it might be 7 people, okay? All 7 of those get a tag. Now it goes down to 30 points. There's 1 tag left. We're at 30 points. 150 people might have applied because it's generally each point lower, there's a bigger pool of people. One of those 150 people is going to get randomly selected, and then the rest don't get anything. They just get another point, and they apply again next year. And now we call that a 30-point unit or a 31-point unit because it took 31 points to draw with 100% odds, right? That's how a true preference point system works. Simple, easy. There's no goofiness. That also contributes to point creep because like there was 149 people that did not draw. 149 people now go to 31 points next year, and there's still only 10 tags available. So they're not going to get through all those people. So every year there's point creep where it takes more and more and more points to draw these tags. It's usually not, in most states, in most like general units, it's less than a point a year. In super high-end examples like the northwest corner of Colorado, it can jump even faster because there's so many people at max points. But that's how a true point system works. After that, there's bonus point systems where it's like you get 10 entries and they're squared. So you go into a lottery with 100 entries, and then it's like a random odds lottery. There's other units where they reserve a certain number of tags for 0-point holders or guided. It's from there it gets messy, and we will do a deep dive state by state into point systems, but just know those are the 3 different styles of how you can get a tag. This episode is brought to you by Matthews Archery. Folks, I just upgraded my Halon to the all-new Matthews Lift X, and I absolutely love it. I went with a 33-inch axle, which is a great fitting bow for anyone like me that's got a little bit longer draw length. And I also went with the 80-pound limbs this time because it gives me the flexibility whether I want to shoot it at 70 for whitetails and target league, or if I want to bump that up to 75 or 80 the next time we go on an archery elk hunt for a little extra energy. And the one thing that I am still blown away by is how smooth this bow shoots. There's no hand vibration when it goes off. It's incredibly quiet, and it's an absolute tack driver. So if you're in the market for a new bow, head over to MatthewsInc.com and check out the new Lift X, either the 29.5 or the 33, depending on what you're looking for. And you're going to see why I've been loving my new Lift X. So you might be thinking, well, great, I understand how I get a tag, but that's the easiest part. The hard part is which tag should I try to get? And that, my friends, is the key question in my mind of planning a Western hunt. What tag should I get? Or in other words, where are we going and what are we going to hunt? It's the key question, right? Well, here's how I used to do it, and then I'll talk about how I do it now. So when we first started, there's virtually no information available. You had to go to state websites, and they still post these. And you could look up these giant data sets and Excel files and PDFs of like last year's draw statistics, and you go through, and it's a maze of data, and you're circling through, and you're like, oh, this unit, and then you doing Google searches and forum searches for, where are people talking about? Oh, I went to, and you'll find a post, and it was like, oh, I was in unit, 7 million, or it was unit 27, and we didn't see a single elk. All right, well, don't go to unit 27. This person, but you never know how to trust, right? You can't trust the information because people lie all the time on the internet. Oh, there's no elk here. Don't come here. Well, it's because they live there and they don't want a bunch of non-residents coming. Or you might have someone that's just very optimistic, like, oh, it was the best hunt ever. It was an amazing experience. Well, they saw 2 elk. They thought it was amazing. So is that really where you want to go? So then when you go to like the states, like maybe sometimes they'll post like their big game management plan, right? And you can read this 200-page PDF on their big game management plan that talks about all the regions and all the units. And you can maybe find which units are over objective for population, right? Like this unit's over objective for elk, so, which means there's more elk than they want there. Okay, well, that could be good. So maybe we'll apply for that unit. So then you go back to that spreadsheet and figure out how many points it took to draw that unit, and it maybe you had them, maybe you didn't, and that's how we used to do it. And you could get it done that way, and a lot of times you would end with like calling, you'd have a unit in mind, you'd do a bunch of research, and then you would say, okay, I'm going to call the big game biologist for this region. And then you ask them some very pointed questions like, hey, I'm looking at this unit, I've done this research, is the current elk population doing this, that, or the other thing? And they'll usually answer with some good information. If you call a big game biologist and say, hey, I'd love to come elk hunting, where should I go? They're going to give you like their cookie cutter response. Well, there's elk across the entire state. Just find some public land and, good luck. But if you say, hey, I want to go to this region, I've done my research, it sounds like there's a good elk population. Is that still true? Has anything affected it? Has the winter affected it? They'll give you some pretty good information then. They'll be like, oh, yes, we did have a really bad winter. We got some mortality this spring. We're seeing lots of reports of die off. I don't think it's, where you're expecting, or no, they'll give you better information if you do research and ask them more pointed questions. So that's how we used to do it. Took a lot of time. Took a lot of time. Now what we use Go Hunt Insider. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that we love Go Hunt. They're our title sponsor for a reason. It's because they make it so much easier to plan hunts. What specifically we use is their filtering 2.0 tool. So this gives you information for every species and every state in the West. And so you can filter on what you want. You can sort based on what you're looking for. For a first Western hunt, what I would look for is success rates and public land availability. Those are the 2 things I care about when I'm planning my first Western hunt, when I'm helping someone plan a first Western hunt. That's what I looked for when I planned Abby and I's hunt last year for antelope. Her first Western hunt, we picked an antelope unit that had the best combination of success rates and public land availability. And then third is when we looked at trophy quality. This year for Colorado, same thing. What unit could we draw that had the best combination of success rates and public land, right? And so we ended up taking out on both hunts. We shot 2 antelope last year. We shot 2 mule deer this year. So that strategy has been proven for us. We really like it. I highly recommend it. And the thing you can get there versus focusing on trophy quality, sometimes trophy quality is high because it's hard to hunt and those animals get old, right? If there's no private land, or if there's no public land, generally animals get pretty big because private hunting pressure is so limited. So keep that in mind. That's how I use it. So I figure out I usually just figure out what I want to hunt, what animal, what species, and which weapon. I don't even pick a state yet. And then I look at all of the different states where I have points or where I have draw odds and use filtering 2.0 to pick a state and a unit. And that's how we do our applications. There's not a single better tool out there for this than Go Hunt Insider. In addition to that tool, you get everything else you need to hunt. You get all the information on the state rules and regulations, all of the application strategies. You get all of the draw odds. You get you have a mapping service with private and public land borders that you're going to need on your Western hunt anyway. Point tracker. They have an amazing gear shop. If you need new gear, it's truly a one-stop shop. So this is not an ad for Go Hunt Insider, but it is one of those things that I think probably pound for pound is more valuable than even a good pair of boots, right? And so if you're planning a Western hunt, this is the time of year to do it, and you want to get Go Hunt Insider, go check them out. Use our code Drawn West. That's one word, Drawn West, because they're going to give you $50 in free credit to the gear shop. And their gear shop has some of the best gear out there, but it also has plenty of options for you to cash in your $50 immediately on good, high quality gear. They have options all the way from $2 as high as you want to go, but it's not like it's all super high and expensive stuff. You can buy plenty of things for $50 or less. So use our code if you're going to get it, because you can save money and get a bunch of money back. So that is the option. So now when it comes to drawing tags, using them, we've heard you talk points, right? A lot of places you will start to need some points. So we will do a full episode on point strategies and application strategies we've talked about in the past, but you're going to have short-term versus long-term units, right? Units that you can draw with 2 points, 1 point, 0 points, or units that take 5, 10, 15 points to draw. When it comes to planning your first Western hunt, I would not recommend spending a lot of points if you have a lot of points. If you've been building for years and you're just not sure when you were going to use them, or maybe you're starting to be like, all right, I want to start going out west. I've got all these points I've been applying for all these years. I would not recommend spending a ton of points on that. And here's why. Your first hunt out west, you're going to be so focused on learning, right? Learning roads, learning how to e-scout, learning what gear works best for you, learning spot and stock skills and techniques, that if you spend 20 points, a lot of times you can spend so much of your hunt in this amazing unit that you've been saving up points for 20 years, and you're going to make mistakes. We all do. And on a hunt like that, 20 points, 15, 20, 25 years of saving up points, I want you to go into that hunt with tons of experience, knowledge, capabilities, and I want you to hit the ground running, right? And so I would recommend, if you've got that many points, just do a starter hunt. Do a hunt the year before for maybe you have 20 elk points. Well, what I would recommend, go on an elk hunt for 2 points, 1 point over the counter in a different state. Maybe it's the same state, but you have a leftover tag. Just get some elk hunting experience first, then do your 20-point hunt and have a way better experience, because you've already done so much of the learning on your first hunt that now you can apply it all to this, dream hunt or trophy hunt. That's my advice on your first hunt. Try to use less points, right? Because you're going to spend so much of it learning. So let's build a realistic budget. What does it realistically cost in order to do some of these hunts? Well, we did a hunt. We just did an episode, how to go elk hunting for $1,500. And it's possible. It does not need to cost $6,000 to go out on a Western hunt. Now, if you go guided, it's probably going to cost that or more, but it can be much more affordable. So here's a couple things to keep in mind. Most states require you to buy some version of a hunting license, maybe even just to apply. You have to buy a non-refundable hunting license. They can range in price widely. Sometimes it's $15, but a lot of them are $100 to $185. And so the reason why you want to know your draw odds, because you don't want to have to do this over and over and over 3 or 4 times a year just to draw a tag, because that adds up fast. That could be a full tag price right there. And so I like draw odds, so I only have to do 1 application a year. I know I'm going to draw because I know how many points it takes, and I have the points. I can do all this ahead of time, and I make 1 application. So hunting license, that's part of it. Tags alone, they also vary widely. But in general, antelope can be the most affordable. Deer is kind of in that middle range. It can be very affordable. It could be more expensive. And then generally elk tags cost the most. Makes sense, right? So antelope, depending on where you go, I've seen prices from anywhere from $280 for a tag for these are all non-resident prices, $280 up to $450. Deer I've seen as low as like 250, but high as 724 for Montana. Sometimes if you get like a very limited entry tag, in some places they have higher prices, and it can maybe get a little higher than that. A lot of times your deer tags are going to be 350, 450, somewhere in that range, 350 to 500. Elk, the cheapest elk tag that I know of for non-residents right now is Idaho, $650. Nevada is probably the most expensive elk tag, or one of them, $1,200. Unless you do some special elk tags that can get more expensive. Montana, very common elk state, that's about $1,048 there. So depending on what you choose, it can be more expensive. And that's another great reason to start more realistic with maybe a deer or an antelope tag, because those tags are cheaper. If it's your first hunt, you don't know if you're going to love this whole Western hunting thing. You don't know how it's going to go. Start lower, start cheaper, start more affordable. That way you're not sinking tons and tons of money into something that you might get home and be like, that was a waste of time. It's not my thing. So those are the tag prices all in. I mean, hunting license, the tag itself, you might need some points for a couple years. That adds up as well. But that's kind of the range that you could plan on. Now, travel, obviously, travel depends on your situation. Where you live, how many miles is it? Are you flying? Are you driving? Are you renting equipment that you're pulling out there? For us, when we just did our mule deer hunt, it was 2,500 miles round trip. We averaged about 18 miles to the gallon without the camper. When we picked the camper up, we averaged about 12 miles to the gallon. But if you just go out, two buddies in a pickup truck, 2,500 miles round trip, you're probably looking at $420 in gas total. You split that $220 a person, $210 a person for gas, right? Not the end of the world, really. Gas, it seems like a big deal because on the way out, you're just getting hit after hit after hit at the gas station. But then once you're there, you pretty much stop spending money on gas. So that adds up. So we've got the tag, maybe $500, let's just say, for a deer or an antelope tag, and the hunting license, right? Maybe $600 all in there, $200 of gas. So now we're at $800 if you hunt with a buddy. Now, food and lodging. This is where things can get crazy, or they can be very cheap, right? If you're doing a hotel, you could be looking at $100 or more a night. Now, if you don't have any gear and you're not sure this whole Western hunting thing is going to be your thing, it might be cheaper to buy or to get a hotel room than it is to buy all the tenting and camping gear if you don't already have tenting and camping gear. You can do a camper rental. That's something we did this year in our mule deer hunt. We did that for $60 a night. Kind of a nice space, especially if the weather's getting colder. To get out of the elements, not have to buy a bunch of like four season tenting and camping gear, but also keep the prices relatively affordable. I mean, if you split a camper rental, $30 a night, not that bad. Or you can do straight camping. Usually the earlier the season, the easier it is to tent. But that can be free, right? If you already have the gear, if you already have a tent, that can be free. Food, same thing. If you're eating like DIY, you're cooking meals, that's generally what we do is we cook things and bring them out with us, like tacos, spaghetti, you name it. I mean, it's the same as eating at home. Do you really have to add a budget for this or not? I mean, you have to eat no matter where you are or what you're doing in the world. But if you're eating out every day, that's going to add up really fast, probably $50 a day with the current restaurant prices. So that could really blow up a budget. The gear. I recommend figuring out a hunt plan where you can use a majority of the gear you already own. So what I mean by that, if you're already a hunter and you already have a rifle, you probably already have a backpack, you probably already have a set of hunting boots, you probably already have hunting clothes. You can probably reuse most of that same gear on a lot of certain types of hunts, like antelopes, mule deer, maybe elk, maybe not, kind of depends. But let's just say you've never bow hunted before and you want to do an archery elk hunt. Well, then you have to buy a bow, which is thousands of dollars generally. You might need a bigger pack for packing out an elk. You might want better boots because you're going to be hiking all the time. All of a sudden, you're talking about lots of money, lots of investment, versus if you're a rifle hunter, you can go antelope hunting in tennis shoes. You don't need a big pack to haul out an animal. You don't need a lot of special gear. You probably already have binoculars or a spotting scope because you're a deer hunter. Those types of things is what I'm talking about with using the gear you already own. If you have a tent, any summer camping tent generally will work in antelope season because it's a little earlier. It's usually a little warmer. Don't need a heater. Don't need a bunch of special gear there. So that's what I mean when I say pick a hunt that meets you where you currently are. Use the gear you already have. Don't go out and buy a ton of very expensive gear for your first hunt if you can avoid it, because you're probably going to learn a lot about how you like to hunt and the gear you like to use. And then you probably end up rebuying different gear anyway after a couple of years of doing this, because then you realize what you really like. So that's my recommendation. Now, here's a couple hidden costs for first timers if you have never gone out west that you might not be thinking of, right? So number one, butcher shop processing. If you're successful and you shoot an elk, what are you going to do with it? Are you capable of processing it, cutting it up, butchering it yourself? Do you have that stuff? Or are you going to drop it off at a butcher shop? There's no right or wrong answer here. But if you drop an elk off at a butcher shop, it could easily cost $500 or more to have that processed, especially if you get things made like brats, snack sticks, jerky, summer sausage. That stuff adds up incredibly fast. And so maybe that's what you want. Maybe that's the point of this whole trip and getting the meat, and that's what you want to do. Just have a budget ready for that. And then taxidermy. Again, if you're successful, are you getting a shoulder mount? Well, a shoulder mount elk right now is probably averaging about $2,000. Shoulder mount deer, generally $750 to $1,000. Antelope are probably the same, to be honest. And with some of these things like antelope, you want to bring that to the taxidermist as fast as possible. You want to bring it to a taxidermist that has a lot of experience with antelope, because their fur is very difficult to work with. And so if you drive that antelope all the way home, bring it to your whitetail taxidermist in Virginia that's never seen an antelope before, it's probably not going to turn out very well. And so bring it to a local taxidermist that has experience with that animal. Same kind of goes for mule deer. They're not quite as tricky, but then how are you going to go get it when it's done, right? So that could be another trip out west, some more gas money. So have a plan for taxidermy. Now, you don't have to get a shoulder mount. You can get a horn mount. We do a lot of horn mounts. We're doing a lot more European mounts now as well. I really like the Europeans, and so does Abby. Those are all much more affordable options. Sometimes you can even do it yourself, and that saves a lot of money. And then the third hidden cost, gas stations. If you're buying snacks at the gas station, every stop out west, multiple times a day during your hunt, I mean, that can start to add up to hundreds of dollars. So be wary of gas station snacks. Bring your own snacks and your own drinks that you buy at the grocery store, and that's going to save you a ton of money on your. Hey friends, if you're listening to this podcast, I know you're an avid hunter just like myself, and we are always looking to get more time in the woods each season. One of the ways that's helped me get more time in the stand is by using Maverick hunting blinds. When I'm comfortable, I stay in the stand longer and I'm more focused on deer. I don't turn around so my hood cuts the wind. I'm not taking shelter from the rain. And the best way to stay comfortable is with a hard-sided blind. And my favorite is Maverick's XL blind, which allows me to rifle hunt, bow hunt out at the same stand. The best part is Maverick has a blind for every spot. So whether you're looking for a rifle only option or a bow and rifle, even a round blind to cut down some of that wind resistance, Maverick has you covered. No matter which option you go with, you're going to be comfortable and sit longer in the stand for all of your upcoming hunting seasons. Go to maverickhunting.com and use the code DRAWNWEST, that's one word, DRAWNWEST, to get 10% off your next blind and elevate platform. All right, now we've talked about how to apply for tags. We've talked about the budget. We've talked about time. We've talked about gear. We've talked about a bunch of things that go into a hunt. Now let's talk about how to get ready for your hunt. You've done all these things. You've got your tag, all that stuff. E-scouting is the key. I don't know if I have ever. Oh, one time I scouted a unit I hunted out west ahead of time, because it was technically in my home state at the time. I lived in North Dakota. I drew a tag in western North Dakota for elk, and so I went out there many times scouting because it was a once in a lifetime tag. Other than that, I've never laid boot or laid tracks steps down in a unit before we hunted it, unless we have gone back to the same unit a couple times. And so what that means is we have to rely on e-scouting, just internet scouting, online scouting, doing research ahead of time on maps and everything we have, in order to have a game plan. And so what you want to do when you're doing your e-scouting is you want to, you're not going to be able to see animals, right? You can't see this is where the elk are. You're not going to get that level of visibility, but maps are very, very useful. And here's what you can look for. Here's how I look for it and this kind of goes into, I check some of these things when I'm applying for the tag. Roads and access. Is there public land access, and are the roads publicly open to that access, to that public land? What you're going to find if you've never been out west hunting before, there's a lot of roads that appear on the map, but they're not actually public. They're private roads, and it's very frustrating. It's one of my biggest gripes. A lot of times what'll happen is it used to be a public road, but the county quit maintaining it. And so they reverted it back to private land. And then the private landowners will shut down access, even though on the map it looks like it goes through the private to public. It'll be counted as a private road, and there won't be any access to that public land. It's super frustrating. So one of the things you can do is you can go on these county websites for whatever unit or wherever you're hunting and look at their county maintained road map. You can also call the county and ask them, hey, is this road open for public use? And they'll tell you. And so you're looking for roads and access. From there, you want to look at the terrain and the habitat type. Does the public land access the public land you have access to, does it have the right type of terrain and habitat? Now, this is going to change depending on what species and what season you're hunting, but by and large, elk like black timber. In most of the Rocky Mountain range, they like some type of black timber, especially until you get into late season. And so is there black timber available, right? Elk know that they get shot at if they stay out in the open too long on public land. So they don't like to do that. Mule deer, they're probably the widest ranging animal out west. They go all the way from high alpine. You can find them in the black timber. You can find them down at low elevation, in private land, in egg fields. They're kind of all over the place. But the concentrations are going to be near good quality food sources. A lot of times, like a private land egg field, a hay field with a center pivot, that's going to have more animals. Antelope, generally like open terrain, sage flats, maybe some slight draws, some slight cover, but not a ton. Usually more creek bed type stuff than like black timber and ridge lines. And so just make sure, and you're gonna have to do some research on this. You're gonna have to learn what your animals like and which season you're hunting, but make sure that the public land in your unit has the right type of terrain and habitat. Then we look for pressure indicators, right? Where are the trailheads? Where are major roadways? Where are other people going to be coming from? The last thing you want to do is have this perfect plan. I'm going to hunt here. There's great terrain. I'm going to park here. I'm going to walk in. You get there on opening day and there's 20 trucks already. Not the best experience. And so be prepared for that. Look, if there's a giant highway off of this big piece of public that looks phenomenal, trust me, everyone knows about it. There's going to be a lot of people there. How can you still hunt that unit, hunt that area, but hunt it in a way where you're not fighting and having a foot race with everyone else? You're maybe coming in from the backside. Maybe you found this out of the way loop where you got to go all the way around, but you can come in from the backside. And then when all those other people come in to hunt, they're going to push animals straight to you, right? From there, then we start to look at things like, okay, I can park here, I can walk this ridge line, I can glass, I can call, I can bugle, whatever you're going to do. Here's water sources, here's where there's some food sources, here's some bedding locations, right? there's some things that you start to pick up, right? Elk like to bed on benches. They generally like to bed a third of the way from the top of the mountain or the ridge, right? They like to go up and bed. Antelope, they like to be out in the middle of an open field where they have great visibility, right? So you'd be like, okay, here's this road. We get up over this ridge and then we can glass out on this huge sage flat. Perfect. Deer, they like to be by food sources and covered, right? They're kind of, there's a big variety, but hey, we can park here, we can run this ridge down, and we can glass all of these ridges that lead into this private land hayfield, right? That's when we start to put together very specific plans and have a lot of them. Have a morning plan and an evening plan for as many days as you're going to go hunting, right? So let's just say you're going to do a 5-day hunt, 5-day deer hunt. Have 10 plans. Here's a morning spot, evening spot, morning spot, evening spot. Hopefully, you don't need all 10. Hopefully, by the time you get to, hopefully your first spot, you're like, oh, this is a spot. We're going to stay here the whole time. I hope that happens, but it probably won't. So then you go to your second, your third, your fourth. Maybe by the fifth spot, you're like, oh, now we're starting to figure it out. And you dial in and you focus in on that one spot. Hopefully that's what happens, but have a lot of plans. You don't want to be wasting, daylight on your hunt, looking at your phone, trying to figure out where should we go. Have a bunch of spots prepped up and ready to go. And that's generally how we do an e-scouting plan. We will certainly do a full deep dive episode on e-scouting to come. But as an overall, that can get you started. All right. So when should you be doing all this stuff? Great question. When to start thinking about it, when to apply, when do we buy gear if we need any, when do we start our e-scouting, when do we finalize our logistics? Well, Western hunting takes some time, especially if you're assembling a group, right? So you got to get everyone on the same page. Who's in, who's out, who's committed, right? You have to have people that are committed, that are going to follow through, because you have to do this stuff generally, unless you do find an over-the-counter option, 6-8 months in advance was when you buy your tags. And so you need people that are going to show up 8 months later. So where do I go to that? Family, very, very close friends, right? People I see every week, every month, every day, potentially, that I like being with. Maybe I've gone on fishing trips with them. Maybe I've gone on vacations with them. I like being with these people. Don't plan a hunt with someone you don't know. You've never been on a hunt with them. You're not really sure, but it's a person, right? You could easily get out there and they're like, I don't want to go, or I don't want to do this, and you just butt heads the whole time. It happens so often. Be careful who you plan your hunts with. But right now is when you should be thinking about it. And why is that? Because application season is about to kick off. We just had Idaho's. Next up is Wyoming's is first, right? And then from there, it's Arizona. And then we get into Montana, Colorado, Utah. Boom, 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 boom. They start dropping like flies. So right now is the time to be thinking about this. Are you going to go out west this year? Who are you going to go with? Where are we going to apply? Those are the questions that we got to start asking right now. Start an email thread with your hunting buddies. Start a text group with your hunting buddies. Start asking these questions. Who's in, who's out? Let's go elk hunting this year. Listen to this podcast. Here's how we can get started, right? This is the time to do it, because you have to get these tags in the spring. All applications, I think the last one is in June, right? They all happen in the spring. So if you don't, then you're really tied to a very limited set of options for over the counter. And it may not be what you want to do. Maybe it is. Great. I don't know. But now is the time to apply, to start thinking about this, putting your group together. Once you get your group together, once you get your applications in, then you can kind of take a break, start training. I would certainly start training, especially the more rigorous your hunt's going to be. If you're elk hunting, if you're backcountry hunting, start getting that cardio in, start getting those legs strong, start getting those lungs strong. Do that. It's a great way to stay in shape. Great motivator to stay in shape is hunting out west. Gear. You have some time on the gear. You can start to look for some sales. You don't have to rush anything. If you need stuff, I recommend trying not to need anything. But you might need a new pair of boots. You might need some backup boots. You might need to buy a pack. You never know what each and every one of us will need. But spend your time looking for sales, looking for discounts. You can generally find a sale somewhere. Memorial Day's got sales. 4th of July's usually got sales. If you're doing a later season, Labor Day can sometimes have some sales. President's Day, you name it, there's sales all the time. And so be on the lookout for some sales. Take your time buying some gear, doing your research, checking it out. The only thing you really want to maybe get early is your boots. You want to make sure your boots are broken in. That's probably the only one. And when to start scouting. So generally, I start my e-scouting after I get my results because every now and then we are surprised. Sometimes big changes happen. Tons of people flood a state. We don't draw when we thought we were going to. And now we got to pivot. We got to go to a backup plan. So I generally don't start getting real deep into my e-scouting until summer. June, July, results are out. You're starting to get close. You're starting to prep. That's usually when I kick up the e-scouting. And then, obviously the month leading up to the actual hunt, we're, diving in hard, looking at maps. Trust me, once you got that tag in your pocket, you'll be so excited that you'll be scouting all the time. You'll be, checking the map while you're watching a movie. You're going to be, while you're waiting for dinner to cook, you'll be looking at, where should we be hunting, dropping pins, you name it. So that'll kind of take care of itself when you got that tag in your pocket and you're getting real fired up for your hunt. And then when to finalize the logistics, a couple weeks out, we're usually talking, final plans. I mean, planning is one of the most exciting parts of the hunt. Who's driving? Are we taking the four-wheeler? Who's got a Ranger? What are we bringing for a tent? Who's got a trailer? And then you're going to really be like, well, we can fit, both four-wheelers on this trailer, or we have this other enclosed trailer that this guy can bring. And, this person's truck's got a topper, so we're going to bring that. And you really dial that in. That'll probably take care of itself as well. So, but yeah, right now, start putting that game plan together, start putting the group together, start looking at, Go Hunt Insider and filtering and figuring out which unit you're going to apply to, what animal you're going to go hunting. Now is the time to do that. And so let's wrap it up. What to expect on your first hunt, right? Go into it with a very open mind. Be flexible, be adaptable. Go into it with the expectation of adventure without the expectation of a destination, right? Go into this expecting to go out west, to see some country, to have an adventure, to see kind of cool things, to experience nature. Don't go into it expecting to punch a tag. Don't go into it saying, this is going to work out. I'm going to bring home a 350-inch bull. I hope it happens. I hope you are the one that is lucky, gets beginner's luck or success and shoots a giant bull. But if you go, there's so much opportunity for letdown. If you go into it with that expectation, just go into it expecting an adventure and you're going to have an amazing hunt. Punching a tag is always a bonus. That's, we don't do it to punch tags. I've never gone on a hunt expecting that it had to punch a tag in order to be successful. And so go into it with that open mindset. When you get there, be adaptable, be flexible. Don't be locked in to your plan because you're new to this, right? It's great to plan. Look at that map a ton, look at pins. But when you get there, you might be surprised. You might, the pressure's this way. The landscape's a little different than it looked on the map. Animals are using it a different way. Be open-minded to changing your plan, run and gun, change it up. I think that's probably your biggest benefit or your biggest opportunity as a newer hunter is you're not locked in to these different mindsets of what it is, what, Western hunting is or isn't. If you grew up and it's like, well, this was what grandpa did, so this is what my dad did, so this is how I hunt, and you kind of get locked into a single focused, narrow way of hunting, sometimes that's limiting. Sometimes it can be much better to have no expectations, no prior knowledge. You just look at it and go, well, why don't we do this? And then you try it and it works. I mean, that can be a huge benefit. And so have that open-mindedness, have that flexibility, adapt to what you're seeing when you get there. And you're going to have a great experience. You really will. Go into it with that mindset and you will be successful every single time. And so to put it all together, We defined our hunt, what we're going to do, what animal, what species, what weapon system, what are we capable of. We talked about what your tag options are, how to draw tags, how to find units. We talked about what the real costs are to do this. We talked about gear. We talked about how to scout. We talked about when you should be starting to do all of these different activities. And so that's how to plan your first Western hunt. If you like this, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast. It really helps us reach more people and help more people with Western hunting, planning, you name it, going on trips, all the things that go into this. So feel free to share with someone dreaming of their first hunt. Send this to someone who's always talked about, oh man, someday I'd love to do that. Someday could be this year, right? That's what I want to tell people, tell you, tell them. It doesn't have to be someday. It could be this year. And so watch out for future episodes. We're going to go deeper into some of these topics. We're going to dive into a lot of the fun things that go into this Western hunting. And if you haven't yet, go check out the Colorado Mule Deer film. It's out there on our YouTube channel. Get Drawn West. And with that, stay drawn.